make this channel because honestly, as a newbie in the hobby, as a rookie in the hobby, I look on YouTube and Reddit and Discord for, just tips and tricks on how best to do this and how I can perfect my craft. And I've found that there's not really a lot out there in terms of that, especially when you get into the non sports side of things. I will say, which I don't remember his name. I will try to find it and I'll link him in the description. But this one YouTuber that I watch often said you have to pay for your education. And I think that was the best thing that I could have ever been told or heard in terms of the hobby. There are so many instances where it was literally through experience and trial and error that I've learned how to navigate the hobby. But I thought it would be cool to start this channel because, I think ideally we want to see the hobby grow, and it is growing. I think since the pandemic, you can see there's been a little bit of a push for it. You're seeing more collaborations with tops, with fanatics, and I think that that's a really cool thing. So why not let somebody else learn from my experience and hopefully get more people into the hobby. So, with that being said, I kind of wanted to just talk about a little bit of my journey. I've always been into comics. I have a pretty nice comic collection, not to brag, but I've always been into comics. And a few months ago, I ran across a Marvel Allure box, and that was the beginning of everything for me. From the Marvel cards, I want to say it was 91 football that I got into. I love those packs. They're not always easy to find. But anyway, so I just kind of fell in love with the hobby. I think for me, it's cool because it feels like everything that I was interested in as a teenager that, back in the day you got bullied for being into that kind of thing, and nowadays it's like, oh no, I can take the things that I love and I can actually make money off of it. So that's kind of cool. So I started my eBay probably about 2 3 months ago. I've only sold 15 cards, and my eBay has both sports, non-sports, and comics on it. I've sold a mix of sports and non-sports cards, no comics yet. And so far, it's been a pretty good experience. I do know that there's a lot more that I have to learn in terms of eBay and how best to sell on it. But so far, I've been liking it. Right now, what I do, because I don't have a scanner, is I take 2 days a week of just taking photos and like content kind of things. And then I take 2 days to post. And that has been working out pretty well. Now, if you're someone who has like your finances allowed, definitely get a scanner. It will make your life easier. It'll make listing easier, and it'll make it a faster process. Especially because nowadays that you can utilize AI so much for your listing that if you have a scanner, it just takes out so much time versus physically going through and taking the pictures. That can be a headache. Not the worst thing in the world, but it is a little tedious. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of what I have been doing, and it's been working out pretty well. I have done some whatnot shows, but I have not for this year of 2024. Whatnot has been interesting, although I'm kind of learning that it's consistency more than anything. So I actually bought a what's it called? It's a box from Otia's Consignment, which if you are on Whatnot, definitely follow him. You should follow his socials. He's a great person in the hobby to follow if you are a newbie. I have learned so much from him and just his method. And honestly, his method is what I'm trying to imitate because it obviously works. But I've bought a few of those boxes. So I have rather, sorry, I speak in plural a lot. But I have the boxes too that have like a lot of the more popular cards. It's kind of like a startup kit for sellers, I guess you could say. Um, so I know that I have the right product. I'm still not seeing the results in terms of sales, but I think that that's a combination of one, I'm really awkward. So um, I think it's hard for me to get people in the rooms because I'm a little awkward and I haven't quite like mastered that presence, as well as I think I probably have to go on a little more often. My first couple shows, I made the mistake of doing too many giveaways, and I learned very quickly that that doesn't necessarily help you, because then you just have people that will follow you for the giveaway but leave after the giveaway is done. So for me, I learned, okay, if I'm gonna do a giveaway, I go into the show knowing how many I'm willing to do, factoring in shipping and all of that. Um, but like I said, I can't really speak too heavily on Whatnot because I am still at the point where I haven't even really broken oh no, I think I have broke even once, but like I technically have yet to make profit on Whatnot. So if any of you guys have advice on that, that would be awesome, because I know, like I said, I know that I have the cards, I know that I have product, and I have good product on both the sports and non-sports end. It's just a matter of I'm struggling with getting people in the rooms, which, full transparency, can be very discouraging. So if you're somebody that's like new in the hobby and you're either utilizing TikTok or Whatnot or Fanatics, and you're finding that you haven't quite caught a groove, be encouraged in knowing that I don't think that that is a abnormal experience. And I say that because although I'm still in my beginning stage, there's a few sellers that I've followed for a while on Whatnot, and I've watched their process go from 3, 4 people in the rooms to they're bidding them up. So I do think that there's a correlation to consistency, like just getting on there, being on there, whether you're selling or not. I think that that will help, but like I'll let you guys know because I haven't quite gotten there yet. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of my journey. I went from having maybe 20 cards, a good a good chunk of cards. Now I think I might have like maybe 1,000 cards now, which is not a lot compared to some people, but for me to be so new in the hobby and to have invested such a short amount of time in the hobby, I think that that's pretty good. Um, yeah, so my goal for this week is to I want to break my 250 mark on eBay. I want to have 250 listings up. I don't know if that's realistic, but that is the goal. So right now I have 115. Ideally, that means I'm gonna have to get up 100 and what, 75, 100, yeah, something like that. But yeah, so that's my goal for this week, is I want to hopefully hit 250 listings. I'm doing that kind of because I'm experimenting a little bit. I noticed that I see an increase on my eBay in terms of sold cards when I've listed a lot. So I find that typically if I spent, let's say I spent yesterday listing, then usually what will happen is within the next day or two, I would have sold a card or two. So I want to see if maybe there's a correlation with that, as far as does eBay push out your listings more based on the volume of listings that you have, which I'll let you guys know if that makes a difference. Um, and then my other goal is I want to get to the point where I have a little bit more of a schedule, as far as, okay, um, listing on these 2 days, going on Whatnot on whatever days, because my next goal is to be able to have weekly shows on Whatnot, which again, in terms of cards that I have, I know is doable. I think, like I said, I'm in the stage of just having to kind of like get used to being on camera and trying to sell shit, and that's why I'm doing these videos, because I feel like it'll help me get comfortable with just hearing my own voice and recording. Because I think for me, with Whatnot, that's the hard part, is that yes, they can respond in the chat, but like you're literally talking to it feels like you're talking to yourself. Like they don't always be interacting in the chat. So it just feels very much so like I'm talking to myself, and that's a lot. I don't know why, but it's awkward for me. It's uncomfortable for me. So I'm trying to push past that. But yeah, my goal is to have eventually I would like to do 3 shows a week, but right now my goal is 1 show a week on Whatnot. And I'm kind of alternating between sports and non-sports to see what does better. Now, obviously, if you are specifically sports cards, I don't know that I'm going to give you too much value. I know it's similar, the process, just based on other people I know with who are in the hobby and that have been in the hobby a little bit longer. But there are some key differences in terms of selling, buying non-sports versus sports. Um, Obviously, the sports cards move fast. They're a little bit more liquid. I've found. I sell more non. I mean, sorry, I sell more sports cards than non-sports cards. Um, so if you're somebody who's wanting to get into the hobby, that is something to think about. For me, that was an interesting transition going from solely being interested in non-sports and then beginning the process of getting into sports cards. The sports side of things, if you're going to do that, I will say you need to be on top of what's happening. You need to be watching the games, the highlights. You need to be on top of who's injured, who's gotten traded, all of those things. Who played well last night? Who didn't play well last night? That is a huge factor. And when in terms of sports, I do better with football, which is ironic because I don't even watch a lot of football, but I have found that football has been easier for me to learn and navigate. It seems like football, again, the cards move a little faster than the non-sports end. And again, I feel like at least from the cards that I have, I've seen that the value of the cards seems to fluctuate a little more. Um, which was for me something to get used to because I have found that on the non-sports end, for the most part, the card value is gonna stay the same. You know, you might see people who are willing to pay more, but typically it's like, okay, the cards are going for about the same amount. Um, Whereas with the sports cards, specifically again the football ones, I see that based on the game that was played or who won, sometimes you'll see a spike even that very next day, if not in the midst of the game. So if you're into the sports side, that's something to consider, is that even if while you're watching the game, you might want to be watching your eBay as well, because it may be to your benefit to increase the price of a card if they're playing well. um, so that's kind of like my where I'm at. Like I said, my goal for next week when I check in is to have had one, done a show, and two, to hopefully have gotten to 250 listings on eBay. And we'll see what happens from there. Now, if there are any veterans that are watching this show, veterans in the hobby that are watching this show, I would love any wisdom or advice that you guys might have. Um, as I said, I am into the non-sports side, but I'm slowly getting into the sports side, and it's